if you ask me, in the end, it is a vision, political will, and funding. Those are the three requirements. And those requirements are fulfilled right now in the European Union, especially in Germany. So we have really great support by the government. We've got funding early this year to start the rollout of the ecosystem. So we are on a good way to do it. But those are the three preconditions that it really flies.
I think the fact that we're at the point where no one questions the value of doing this is honestly a significant achievement, because in my 10-year journey, I was this like forced slave. Like getting all these different parties aligned on what direction has actually been, a challenge. And also,
it's catching on.
I was one of those. Go ahead.
Yeah. So no, it's actually a funny story here, because Torsten, as he in introduction mentioned, he was mainly involved with the OAuth 2, which is this, federated identity authorization space. And as I said, I came from the blockchain background, right? And back then, blockchain people were like, those federated people don't care about privacy. The federated people were like, oh, those blockchain people are just nuts. So it's like kind of, we met in the middle. And I think that was the true power. We kind of combined the knowledge from both sides and tried to find the pragmatic solutions.
This is Identity at the Center. If it has anything to do with IAM, this is the go-to podcast. Now your hosts, Jim McDonald and Jeff Steadman.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Not so bad yourself?
Great, man. Here at EIC 2025, EIC, European Identity and Cloud Conference.
Good job. You did it. I don't know what happened to the last C, but it definitely is EIC.
Yeah.
It's not EICC.
It's the EIC conference.
Right. That probably makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what is also special beyond it being a fantastic conference is fantastic food.
Food's been good, yes. I'm enjoying my first visit to Berlin. My first time at EIC has been fantastic. This is our last sort of on-site episode that we're recording from the stage here at EIC. So yeah, it's been cool. I dig it.
Very cool.
Yep.
And gets us out of our normal day-to-day for sure. And, everything's a little bit different.
Yeah. No, I'm enjoying myself quite a bit. So thanks to Martin. Thanks to Marina for hooking us up with all the help that they've given us for this. And I have to say, you are very well dressed today. I'm kind of disappointed, though, that there isn't the jacket.
Oh, really? No, that was intentional.
Okay.
This is like a
Western
style.
dealer.
So I saw Carson, what's his last name?
Wentz.
Joseph Carson. No, Carson's his last name.
Carson you're looking for.
Yeah. So this is how he kind of dressed yesterday. I was like, spot on.
No, he did very well. So another former guest of ours.
Former guest.
He's gone on to great things since being on the podcast.
He was a great thing when we had him on.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Why don't we get to our main guests for today? So let me go ahead and introduce a couple members of the German EUDI Wallet project, and we're going to find out what that means in a second. They're also part of SPRIN-D, so I'm going to ask about what that means. But we've got Kristina Yasuda, she's the product owner, and then Dr. Torsten Lodderstedt, who is the project lead. So welcome to Identity at the Center, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right. So we've already got some chuckles coming out of Kristina, which is great. So let me start with you. How did you get into identity? Is it something that you chose, or did it choose you?
Something in the middle, in a sense that, so the problem I was originally trying to solve was marginalized populations, refugees, and single mothers, and not having means to identify themselves, and hence not being able to get access to society, different opportunities, and all that. And that's how those people are kind of forgotten on purpose by the government. So that's how I got introduced to what back then was known as self-sovereign identity, OZE, distributed ledger technologies, and all that. Back in 2016, I think. So we did a few pilot projects. I was running my own NGO back then, but I pretty quickly realized that it was probably not the best fit for what I was looking for. And the solutions we had back then were not very scalable and did not really meet the, I think, privacy and security requirements we had. But the concept just hooked me. And I went deeper. Instead of being like, doesn't work, let's go somewhere else. I was like, I just keep digging deeper. If technology is not there, but I believe in the use case, let's make it real. And that's how I started digging into technical standards. And actually, so yeah, I did that work for a while. And now I'm like super happy to be in a position where we're actually building a product that we hope to deliver to maximum 80 million Germans, hopefully, and even more beyond that, because Europe has 440 million people, right? And yeah, that excites me a lot because we've been working on it for almost 10 years now. So finally having a product that's so close, because this idea of kind of users being able to prove who they are to the services, not through the big identity providers, so not through Microsoft or Google, but directly. I feel like many of people in IAM like wanted to do it, so it's not even the first wave. And finally, I think the technologies and APIs and all that are more or less kind of aligned with the funding and the public interest. So I feel we have an opportunity that I really want to ride on.
So there's a lot I want to unpack there.
Yeah,
but let me get to Dr. Torsten here. Tell us about your identity background.
Yeah, first of all, you can call me Torsten.
Okay. I was going to ask at some point if I get permission.
We are friends, right? So I used to be an IT consultant, specializing in software architecture and security. I did my PhD in secure software development. And after a project I did with the New York City subway, I was hired for a consulting job with Deutsche Telekom in Germany. And there I started to work in identity. So it was partially stumbling into it, yeah. So I started I was responsible for the consumer identity management for the German market. So, and over time I really fell in love with the topic. So, I mean, this is really a niche topic in the end, but it's really fascinating. And after a couple of years, I started also with standardization. So we had invented our own stuff, and then I got in touch with the international community, visited my first internet identity workshop, and got sucked into the OAuth 2.0 standardization. So did the security threat model, and so it went on and on and on. Now I got the pleasure to work with Christina in different capacities. So first of all, we started a while back in 2020 to work on OpenID for verifiable credentials. And yeah, now we are working together in a project, right? Building cool projects, building cool stuff. And that's always what counts for me, right? Building stuff. And it was mostly consumer identity that I've done, never enterprise or internal stuff. Building services and products that really work with real users, that solve real problems, that scale, right, to a high number of users. And with the wallet, we have a completely new quality, right? Federated systems work for web SSO, and now with the wallet, we can do amazing things in proximity, right? With the same technology, we can log into a website, we can pay in a point of sales. And this is really amazing. The number of use cases and what we can do for the society is quite amazing. So, and having the opportunity to build that for the German market is, or society, better said, is really amazing.
It's a project with significant impact, and sometimes it takes a while to see that impact. I would imagine you guys have been toiling over this for a while. So maybe give us a little bit of background of the EUDI wallet project itself. And I assume it means EU as in European Union, and DI as in digital identity.
Yes.
So, okay, good. I got that right. Tell us a little bit how the project started. And I'm really curious about your side of this, Christina, as well, because you actually transplanted from Seattle to Berlin, I think, for this. Maybe we'll start with you, and then Torsten, we can go after that.
So I moved to Berlin because of this person.
So it's your fault.
left well-paying big tech job. I think it's a no, but I'm really happy. I'm happy that I did it. But back to your question. Interesting, right? In EU, I think it ties back to the regulation, EIDAS 2. So EIDAS 1 passed in 2014, which says, make sure every citizen has a plastic card, and you can do this legally binding signatures. For American audience, it's like a DocuSign, legally binding DocuSign. And for EIDAS 2, 10 years later, 2024, European Commission said, digitize that so you can get the government-issued identity into your digital wallet. But not just that, try digitize anything you can. So driving licenses, e-prescriptions, like digitize any part of what's paper now. So that scope just became massive, right, already. And then they said, because it inherits EI-1, make sure you can do signatures in the wallet too. And because there's digital euro work coming up, they said, make sure there's some payment related, payment authorization feature also in the wallet. So it's like this massive project. And so European Commission has this regulation, but the way European Union works, every single member state is responsible for implementing it. So now every single country, including Germany, before the end of 2026, needs to have this wallet in production. And when we say wallet, we actually don't mean just this application that in the user's hands, because that application needs to have this digital data issued to it, and it needs to be able to present the data to the service providers. And to trust all this, you need to have this trust fabric and the orchestrators to make sure everything works, right? So that's the scope we're looking at. And that's when German government, maybe Torsten can follow up here, the German government kind of assigned SPRIN-D, the company we work for, the Federal Agency for Breakthrough Innovation.
Which is a very cool
I love
name.
it, right?
Yeah,
It
great.
sounds so
You should be
cool.
leading with that, by the way.
It's actually... it was originally the SPRIN-D agency itself was founded as DARPA of Germany, but without defense. So its main job is actually venture capital of the German government, which I also find really cool. But yeah, that's how. Yeah, I was working in Microsoft. Microsoft had a product in that area, but I said the hot potato, the hot things happening in Europe right now. I want to be in the middle of it, and also. Another, I think, part of the story is this technical standards. So because you have this 3 distinct players, entities issuing data into the wallet and wallet presenting it to service providers to interoperate, you need to make sure the protocols you send this data through and how you trust each other, that has to be standardized. And luckily, when the regulation got passed, it became very clear that some of the standards that we've been working together will be the underpinning layer of all this. So yeah, I really wanted to contribute the expertise and keep building on that, getting implementation. So yeah, passion-based.
Yeah, impact. Impact is the key word here. So first of all, the German government decided to pursue a pretty new and unique way. They started the project with the Federal Agency for Breakthrough Innovation, and we built a team. Basically, we built a team with experts, international experts. And first of all, the atmosphere in SPRIN-D is pretty different from typical public administration organizations. So flat to non-hierarchy and good working culture.
Get
And
my
we-
travel expenses reimbursed in a day.
No, it's. I mean, I have worked in startups, and it's more like a startup than a federal agency. And I have worked in private sector previously, so this is my first engagement as a federal employee. So
So maybe it's a little bit spoiled because maybe you had that preconception going in that would be one thing.
yeah,
And now I know this is the way it should be working.
Perhaps. But the German government decided to set up that project, and not only to set it up in the way it was set up, but also to a fully transparent consultation architecture process. So what we do is not closed shop. We're not closing the door, coming up with some ideas, design it, implement it, and then boom, it's there. No, we really do that in interaction with the society. So we have published our ideas. We have there's open code. It's the open source platform of the German government, where you can find our blueprint document. You can file issues. You can file pull requests if you want. We have public consultation where people can give their feedback and contribute to what we do. And that worked out amazing. So we have been talking to civil society, science, private sector, and so on, and they all were able to contribute their perspective to this, because our final goal is that the EUID wallet ecosystem is something that is really appreciated and embraced by the German society. And I would like to mention that, especially in Germany, digitization is a really, really hard thing, right? I mean, you know the term of German Angst, right? And it's real. It's real. So people mostly focusing on issues and challenges and less on opportunities. And so we try to balance that, right? To really highlight the opportunities that we have for our society, because our degree of digitization is really low in comparison to all the other European member states, for example. So for us, it's an opportunity to really, make a breakthrough when it comes to digitalization of the society. So this is real impact. And this is, in the end, also, which caused the attention of talents like Christina, right? So making an impact, being able to build this huge infrastructure is really amazing. And I'm all super grateful for having the opportunity to work in that project.
So Torsten, you and Christina were on this stage yesterday, and I remember one slide which was kind of like a roadmap or a timeline. It looked very aggressive to me. Mm-hmm. I guess my question is, are there any things out there in the wild in production today? Is anyone actually using the wallet, or when will this actually get onto people's devices?
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to mention what is different from the difference between what we're doing here in the EUDI wallet and previous attempts is wallets have been around for, I would say, 10 years, roughly. But they never really saw their breakthrough because it is a three-party model. And in the three-party model, it's even more difficult to get enough adoption that it really flies. So in the end, declaring that as a public-private or as a public digital infrastructure is a different thing, right? So previous attempts were mostly funded by the private sector and they failed, right? But because of a lack of adoption, building this infrastructure has a real chance. There are wallets out there today, obviously. Most of us.
So do you mean payment wallets or identity wallets? Identity wallets.
You want to challenge me? No, basically wallets. I mean, most wallets have both functionalities today, payments and kind of data in it. Don't know whether you would call it identity wallets. I was referring to the previous attempts, though. Those were identity wallets, for example, in the SSI space.
Right.
But that's an interesting question because, I think of, from my viewpoint, it's in America side is mostly a payment wallet because that's really what we have. Things like Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay. And is it payment? Yes, but there's an identity in there. So how do you define an identity wallet versus...
Slowly, MDLs are getting into your wallets in the US. So,
so to your question. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So which means that, in my perception, there were previous attempts in a self-sovereign identity space, but they are more or less isolated, right? More proof of concept kind of work, but they never got real traction because lack of adoption, as I said. And what we saw is that, the main driver for wallets on smartphones were payments, obviously, but over time we got tickets and boarding passes and then mobile driver's license into those wallets. So for us in the European Union, we typically have a government issued ID, so we do not use our driver's license to do identification. So the question is, how do we get those credentials into the wallet? And that is the starting point for the EUDI, right? So one of our slides, we also said that the current wallets lack the security level and the privacy level that we desire for our identity credentials. And that's one of the main points of the EUDI wallet. So, and there is no EUDI wallet yet in production.
Christina, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a few clarification points.
You picked up on that, huh?
It was very subtle, right?
Ooh, me.
It's a Japanese part of me, right? Like, I need to raise my hand. No, I'm joking. I think it's important to clarify that, yes, like, in America, like, Real ID law had to be passed to consider driving license to be an identity document, versus in Europe, driving license or just driving privileges. Identity documents are different, right? But to your production question, I think for surely in America, like, they are, Google Wallet, Apple Wallet, but also some startup wallets are rolling out in production, like California, for example, not just California, but different states. I'm sure there's a list on the internet. So yes, we do see them in production. And we also see that in the standards work, I think, because the contributions and requirements and feedback we're getting in the standard space are very real now, right? Like, this is the deployment problems we're having, like, can be improved. And within the EU context, I think there are countries that are having, like, the closed beta, like, with real users already. So, like, each member states are trying. As I said, we have the deadline. And yeah, not like large scale production that anyone can download, but like, yeah, there are steps that are being taken for sure.
That's very cool. So after you guys got off stage yesterday, did people stick around to ask you questions, or have you gotten questions from people who were in the audience? And what kind of, anything very insightful?
I think people get very excited that I mentioned tenders.
Yeah, we have heavy standards.
But it's true, as I said, right? We need to build an ecosystem. So we need help from everyone. And as we've been saying, the value of the wallet increases with the amount of data that goes in and the places where you can use it. So we really need this like larger excitement from the industry, basically. And it's interesting because Google Wallet made an announcement that they're deploying all those protocols. And they mentioned huge relying parties like Amazon, CVS, and whatnot. And like it's interesting because we want those big relying parties in Europe to take this wallet seriously too, right? So I think that's kind of at least the questions I hear a lot is like, how did we get there? How did we, yeah.
Yeah, and there's another question that we also wanted to address yesterday, and this is about digital sovereignty, especially from the member states perspective. And most people, or a lot of people, interpret the EUDI wallet as an alternative to the wallet of the platform providers. That's not the way we see it, right? The way we see it is the EUDI wallet is a concept, right? It's basically a regulatory framework and a standards feature set that you can expect the wallet to provide. So we are super happy to cooperate with the big platform vendors like Google. They just need to play to our rules. It's very important because we have special security requirements. Otherwise, we can't put our EID into such a wallet, right? So because we, in the end, are liable that it really works in a secure fashion and a privacy-preserving fashion. And I had over dinner, I had a conversation about the non-discriminatory access to all the thing, right? Because since we are building a government-provided wallet, the question is whether those private wallets even have a chance.
Right.
Because the policymakers could make a policy that basically the public wallet has a pole position. And what is interesting is, since we said any wallet must work with any provider of a credential, must work with any relying party, it's in the end the user that is in the driver's seat. So the user selects the wallet, and if the user goes with Kristina's wallet, fine. If the user goes with Google Wallet, this is also fine. In the end, we want this ecosystem to flourish, right? That's
Set standards.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the point.
But for me, it was fascinating moving from America to Europe, right? I feel like in America, if Google or Apple or Samsung or whoever publishes a new feature, everyone's like, yeah, let's go, try it. Whereas like in Europe, and maybe particularly Germany, it's like, can we trust it? Are we sure they're
There's
not
a hesitancy.
Are we sure they're not going to steal even more data from us?
And the answer is no, we're not sure.
Also,
It's surprising.
I'm thinking from the platform provider. So is it like the browser where they see it as a competitive edge to have the user use their wallet rather than some third-party wallet?
But we really need to separate those companies providing the infrastructure, the browser engine, mobile operating system that we cannot go around for any product, right? Versus like those companies actually building their own product using those primitives, right? And that's where, for example, Google and Apple strategies are different, right? Like Google is pretty, like, I mean, I shouldn't say like Apple's been, I think, changing a little bit, but like basically making sure these good security privacy features built into the browser and the operating system are available to any wallet, any third-party wallet, versus like making sure those best features are available only to the platform provided wallet, right? There's this big difference. And I think the key point we were trying to make yesterday in the keynote is, yeah, like we want to have this playground. Like as a government, we want to make sure that playground is guarantees security, privacy, interoperability for the users. So like if users are making a choice within the options in that playground, the user is safe and it gets the convenience and life's becoming better. And also obviously the big driver behind all those regulations and work is digital economy in Europe, right? Like making sure digital services are flying better. But yeah, if you want to play within that, great, anyone's welcome. Outside that, not sure.
And in the end, digital sovereignty also means we can make our choices and we do not have a lock-in. And that's important, right? We need to be able to make our own decisions as a government and as a society. That's basically what it is. And most of the platforms are not operated by companies that are located and or situated in the European Union. This is our challenge, right?
Yeah, and that challenge has come up several times throughout this conference is, what happens if something happens.
Why is
Some of
it
those
coming up
services.
now? I don't know why.
It's always been there, but I think it's a little more maybe realistic at this point.
Yeah.
But this idea of having a wallet that is interoperable with other wallets is very interesting. I don't know if we get to the point where we can say who's running the wallet and do we trust them. So I think this is more regional, maybe more country specific or whatever it may be. But from the U.S. side of things, at any given point, 50% of the population doesn't trust the government. So I don't know if the government is the right entity for the U.S. to do that. Now, they, of course, have real IDs, and today is May 7th, which is like real ID apocalypse for airports.
Right.
So who knows what's happening at airports right now, we've had like 23 years, I think, of kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
So, but people wait to the last minute, and I'm getting to the point is basically, is government the right choice to run that infrastructure for a digital identity wallet when you have private companies who can do it? How do you separate that? Google's a great example, right? They have a ton of different things, including a browser that has mass market share, but it is a product of Google. How do you even try to separate something like that to make it vendor neutral, hopefully as sovereign as possible, that I can manage that identity of my own? I just don't know how that would actually work.
It's a pretty difficult to answer question. I will try to separate it a bit. So first of all, the government tries, or we as a government project try to come up with a concept where the government or the member states only runs the minimal infrastructure that is needed to leave whatever the market can address to the market. Because we do not want to spend taxpayer money on things that private companies can do. Which means you need to govern the ecosystem. That's policy. Which means you need to be able to manage the trust in the ecosystem. Which of the wallet providers are certified? I mentioned that yesterday on stage. There's a concept of certification and recognition. So only if you are certified to certain security and functional requirements, then you can be eligible for being recognized. And if you're recognized, then you're added to a list, so people can see, okay, this is a certified and recognized wallet. So this is the responsibility of the government to do that. And the second thing, and this is the big cultural difference, right? In continental Europe, we are used to government-provided IDs, right? So I've got my ID card in my wallet, and I will going forward have my government-issued eID in my wallet. So this is generally accepted. This is a cultural thing, which is completely different in Australia, in the US and UK, for example. So those two different things are expected to be provided by the government. The government-provided wallet is a different thing. We built that, first of all, to have more control over how we hit the timeline. And the aggressive timeline that you mentioned is a political timeline. So it is buried in law. So the law says after a certain time elapsed, you need to publish the wallet to really have pressure on the member states to do it. It's a pretty tough timeline, I can tell you. So, and that's why we built that wallet on our own, because we do not want to be dependent on external parties that we do not really control, right? Other than giving them tons of money.
So Germany remains compliant.
Yeah, we are complying with our legal obligations, because if we do not comply with the legal obligations, we most likely will see I don't know what the right term is, lawsuit or something like that from the European level on us, because it's our contractual obligation to provide that wallet.
I was going to ask, what is the repercussions if...
Fines.
It's fines?
Fines, yeah. Okay. Mostly fines, yeah.
Money talks.
And that's why we are building the government provided wallet. That's the one reason. And the other reason is to really have something that we can rely on, so we do not, on the long run, depend on other providers, because the wallet is the center of the infrastructure. If you don't have a wallet, I mean, the rest is just useless.
I think there are two extremes possible within the same framework, right? Like one extreme is government issuing the digital version of government ID into the government provided wallet and users using it, I don't know, when doing certificate of residency, right? Like all government. Versus like within the same framework, within the same EUDI wallet, it's also completely possible that a pharmacy is issuing an e-prescription into a private company provided wallet. Again, doesn't have to be a big platform, could be a Deutsche Telekom, I don't know. And that being presented to another hospital in the Netherlands, for example, another kind of private company. Like within the same framework, both are completely possible. And it's like our job to enable both, right? And I think that's true power here. And the tools, I'm not going to repeat what Torsten said, is certify, making sure everyone's complying with this playground, right? Basically making sure that playground, and within that, it's user choice. And if you trust the government, goes this way. If you don't trust, goes this way.
What do you think is holding back more widespread adoption in general? Because I think it's hard to argue against this idea. I feel like it makes so much common sense. And
Thank
maybe
you.
that's just me. And maybe this is just, I'm an identity and I get it. I know why it's needed. But what do you think is holding back players in this space and probably countries or cultures or whatever that aren't keeping up? Because EU is definitely further ahead of this than, I would say, like North America. So what does it take to get other countries, other regions to get onto this thing? Because I don't think it's a matter of if, it's more of a matter of when. But until everyone's doing it, you have to like support so many different ways to do this. What is it that's going to be like, let's do it? Is it just, hey, the law is now and EU does this and everybody in the EU is doing this because they want to avoid a fine, and so that's sort of like the tipping point? Or is it something else?
Me? So
I have opinions too, but yes.
Christina's going to raise her hand if she wants to.
We are both very opinionated.
Well, that's great, because this is an opinion podcast.
Early attempts to build wallet-based solutions all failed because basically a three-party system is so complex, right? You need data. First of all, the people need to install the app. Users need to get the data into the wallet, and then you need a relying party that accepts the data. This is much more complex than any federated identity system, right? In any identity system, your user base is your capital, right? So in the wallet-based system, it's even more complex because you need the wallet installed base and you need the credentials. And so that's why private initiatives all failed. And that's why I think we needed to learn and accept this is a public infrastructure. It needs to be built like railways were built and streets were built and so on. And at least in Europe, mostly with tax money, right? So this is the infrastructure that needs to be built by the state. So that can private sector companies can build products on top of it.
And not just built, but it has to be supported too, right? I mean,
exactly. Yeah, it has to be built. It has to be supported. So
yeah.
If you ask me, in the end, it is a vision, political will, and funding. Those are the three requirements. And those requirements are fulfilled right now in the European Union, especially in Germany. So we have really great support by the government. We've got funding early this year to start the rollout of the ecosystem. So we're on a good way to do it. But those are the three preconditions that it really flies.
I think the fact that we're at the point where no one questions the value of doing this is honestly a significant achievement, because in my 10-year journey, I was this like forced slave. Like getting all these different parties aligned on what direction has actually been, a challenge. And also,
it's catching on.
I was one of those. Go ahead.
Yeah. So no, it's actually a funny story here because Torsten, as he in introduction mentioned, he was mainly involved with the OAuth2, which is this, federated identity authorization space. And as I said, I came from the blockchain background, right? Like back then, blockchain people were like, those federated people don't care about privacy. The federated people were like, oh, those blockchain people are just nuts. So it's like kind of, we met in the middle, and I think that was the true power. We kind of combined the knowledge from both sides and tried to find the pragmatic solutions. But that's not what I wanted to say. I wanted to say that this kind of technical specifications being settled finally is also what's pushing this, because my last year's keynote, I talked about, can we please stop fighting? Because before that, it was like, at different layers of protocol, credential formats, trust framework, identifiers, key resolutions, people are just like pulling in different directions. Use blockchain, not use blockchain, like keep doing what you're doing, not doing. And I think finally we're seeing a real convergence around one stack. And within that same stack, all the standards are going towards maturity. Because even now, if you build it, you have to align on like which version are you using and all that. So there is still like political will, money given. There's still some left uncertainty. And I think that's kind of potentially one last milestone like, I don't know if milestone is the right English term, but like one last kind of push, right? And once we have that all stable, at that point, really, it's built to meet the deadlines, right? And I think we'll see that across the globe. Like, for example, Japan is definitely looking at what's happening in EU and the US. So, and mutually between US and EU too, right? And within Southeast Asia and Africa, MOSIP is doing an interesting work, but I think they have a slightly different requirements because smartphones are just not as good as in the global north, so to say. So the movement is there, and I think the components are there, and I would expect to see a huge push starting end this year to like end of 2026, and yeah, we'll see.
You used the magic word that I wanted to talk about, which was requirements.
Oh, okay.
So I'm wondering, like, were the requirements all set up front, or do you have stakeholders? Who are those stakeholders? Are they helping to refine the requirements? And then you brought up another topic. So that's question number one. I do this very often. I do
Great.
3-part questions and expect you to remember
Has to
them
be
all. Okay. No, it will be 2. So the requirements, and then, well, why don't we just stick to that for now?
Let's talk about EU. So EU, it's a multi-step process, right? So we have a regulation, which is really high-level, non-technical requirements, right? Like, for example, users have to be able to do these features using the wallets. So that's where I started, right? There's like everything has to be digital, also signatures, also payment authorization, and pseudonyms, for example, and all that, right? And then that needs to be one more level more broken down into technical implementations, and that's implementing acts, technical implementing acts. And that too, to actually achieve interoperability among 27 member states, there's an architecture reference framework. So it's kind of like 3-step process is in terms of like process and who are involved. At different levels, different people, but overall, yeah, European Commission. And before that, because it's a law, it's elected representatives of European citizens. And then each member state also gets to involved in different level. And also Commission has been open where everything happens on GitHub. So if you're like an industry body or standards body, or you represent a specific interest group, you can contribute and communicate. And, it's arguably a transparent process. Not always. Obviously, everything goes as smoothly. There are timelines and number of people involved is massive. But yeah, I think there is a serious attempt to collect requirements and needs from as many stakeholders as possible and try to meet in the middle.
Yeah, what I was wondering, Torsten,
I would like to add, if I may.
Sure.
So on the level of the member state, Germany, we have another set of requirements.
Yeah.
So
yes.
What Christina explained is basically the regulation. It's the law.
Yeah.
Right. The law already has a pretty detailed product description. But with what we did in the consultation process, we also talked in detail with the different stakeholders about what are their needs, what are the opportunities, and that's why we used to develop our own roadmap. So we on our own developed a roadmap and how we in the end prioritize features and how we're going to roll them out. So we also do, as part of this consultation process, gather our requirements.
When I talk about something like this, I can't help but try to figure out how it's going to work in reality. So I've been thinking 2 different use cases, and I'm wondering if they are the requirements that you're looking at and trying to solve for. One is there's got to be some kind of transition period, right? Not everybody has a smartphone, and there are some people who may not even have a EU credential but are here. For example, me, I have a US passport, which leads into the second use case, which is global, beyond the EU. Is the set of requirements that you should be able to support kind of anything beyond what is needed in the EU. So in other words, travel globally, either incoming or outgoing.
Yeah, those are very important questions. So on the first part, the European Digital Identity Wallet is first of all supposed to be a additional component.
You're not going to get it.
So you can get one.
No, I'm joking.
So it is basic. I mean, first of all, we need to get it started, right? We need to build the ecosystem. We need to get started. So we cannot expect anyone in the beginning to have that wallet, and we cannot expect any relying party to support it. So that means we will have a parallel structure. We will keep our existing processes, even paperwork-based processes, and start with the more digitized versions using the wallet. So that's the answer to the first question. So we will have a very long, very, very long transition period. And even in the EUDI law, in EIDAS, it is stated that if people do not want to use the EUDI wallet, they are not forced to. So it's not mandatory from the user's perspective. On the second point, I would admit that right now we are looking onto Europe, under the European Union, to be more precisely, which excludes Switzerland, for example, and then in the European...
And the UK.
The UK, yeah. However, and that it's basically due to the fact we first need to do our own homework, right? We need to build the ecosystem. We need to get it interoperable in Germany, across the European Union. But we are already looking into point-to-point interoperability with Switzerland, for example, right? For example, today we had a panel where a representative of the Swiss EID project was present. So we're looking into that as well. And I think the fact, at least on a technical level, that we more or less have settled around the same set of standards makes it easier. The hard part is to get the legal interoperability done, so mutual recognition and so on. And this is going to be a hard task. I personally expect it will happen in domains. So the mobile driver's license most likely will be the first domain because, I mean, you rent cars around the globe. So most likely that will be one of the use cases that we will enable globally, and we will see what other domains might be. I mean, the COVID vaccination certificate, right, back then was an example of a domain-specific credential that worked on a global basis. And I think this is something we should run.
Yeah.
But those are conferences like this that really help, right? Because like before it happens at that level, like people leading their own things in different countries in this kind of conferences meeting and being like, yo, what's up?
Yeah.
That really helps. Like you know, there's actually people from America too, right? American Motor Vehicle Association representative is here. Some people from Australia are here. Like a lot of people from Japan. Like so, yeah, that really helps. And to maybe illustrate a little bit, for example, as Torsten said, I don't think there's a big disagreement among the key countries, like on these pillars. And the difference are, for example, when a service, like when Amazon is sending a request to a wallet, like in the EU, where it's a requirement at this point, we're saying in the EU, we have to make sure Amazon is registered in the EU. We have to make sure there's this registration that request is signed and the wallet has to validate it, right? Whereas in America, there's no such requirement. They're saying it's a discrimination, like even if request is not signed, even if you're not sure it's actually Amazon, still let it go, right? So it's like differences like that. But at that point, it's sovereignty, arguably. So we're not going to try align on that globally. So it's like different levels, like what we need to align globally to make it work versus regional differences will remain for good reasons, probably.
You know, you brought up the digital driver's license, and I feel that's an area where in the United States a lot of progress is being made. Yeah. But I think it's so dependent on the readers. There has to be, you know, I'm not going to open up my phone and hand it to a police officer. Right? I don't trust that person to go through and look at the information. I've got to just bump my phone and it'll transfer just the information that they need in a traffic stop kind of situation. So
stop speeding, man.
That's another, well, I can't promise anything, but it's just another level of standards that's probably required, right?
I think with driving licenses, the interesting dynamic is the majority of work that has been done in that area is this in-person over Bluetooth NFC presentation where you're imagining like tapping and all of that, right? But like in reality, the big need is over the internet. Like there are only so many cases where you're speeding in the middle of a mountain or in the middle of, I mean, America, it's a huge country. So maybe you have, highways where there's no connection, to be fair. But like a majority of cases, you have internet connection, you get a request remotely. You're like in proximity physically, but the request is being sent over the internet. It's encrypted and all that. And I send like over the HTTPS, no need to hand any phones. And that's where like, as long as the same protocol is supported, it works, right? And that's where arguably the barrier of what you call the readers or the verifiers supporting the same protocol is much higher, right? And I think there's actually some work happening in FIDO, starting in FIDO, to make sure the same protocol that works over HTTPS also works over Bluetooth using CTAP hybrid.
Bluetooth, right.
And once that becomes real, every single, like, even reader that only is offline right now, like the Android OS readers, can automatically upgrade, and you can use the same OpenInfoVP protocol over the HTTPS and the Bluetooth. I think that's where the adoption actually gonna, boom. But it's steps by step.
Yeah, the solution is there. It's just everybody. How long is it going to take for everybody to get online? Because if you end up in, say, you have a driver's license in New York City, and you're driving across country, and you end up in the middle of the country, and they don't have the reader, what then? You have to keep a wallet, a physical manifestation. Do you have to unlock your phone and show them? I mean,
There'll be edge
that's my
cases
concern.
always.
Yeah, I mean, it's the current situation. I mean, basically, I used to pay with my phone, but yes, I have still my credit card in my pocket as a plan B, right?
Plan B,
Yeah,
right?
it's a plan B, and I think it will take time up until. I mean, when I can remember when computers were introduced in the company where my mom worked, and they still printed out everything,
Right,
just to be
right.
sure, right? To have a
right.
plan B when the computer is not available, right?
They
no one
still
would do
do
that
it
to
in
them.
Japanese, though. Even now.
I think we're in the midst of the very beginning part of the transition.
Yes,
yeah.
And to be honest, I feel like this is like a decades long thing, just knowing you're trying to get 180, 90 countries eventually on board with this. That just takes time.
I would not.
But it has to start somewhere.
I would not argue with you.
You guys have been really generous with your time, and I want to ask a very, very important question before we wrap things up. If you were a potato, how
I would
would
be
you
a potato.
or potato, or however you want to do it. If you're a potato, how would you want to be prepared? And then I'm going to analyze your answer.
Uh-oh.
So who wants to go first?
Yeah, so I grew up in Japan. We value our rice cookers in Japan. And I don't know if you know, but you can actually cook potatoes in the rice cooker. You just put the potatoes with water in the rice cooker, you press the button, and then it's just done. I want that.
So I was not aware of this, and I have a rice cooker, so I can try this. What's the consistency? Is it like a baked potato? Is it like a mashed potato? Like, what does it come out
It's
as?
like a boiled-ish.
So it's very
it's
soft
like a
and mushy?
steamed boiled, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I use it for raclette. It's really good.
Okay. All right. That's good.
I don't have any clue of cooking,
Okay.
so I would like to be delicious. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would order out and have
As a
potatoes
requirement.
delivered.
Or maybe I want to be like a fried potato, like, how do you call it? Like
French fry.
French fries, but they're a good one. You know what I mean? There's a difference between a
Yes.
bad French fries
Yeah.
and
Yes.
really good French fries.
Now,
right?
would you be like a straight French fry or a curly fry or like a waffle fry?
Don't make me curly.
Okay. That's where you draw the line.
You're already fried.
See, I took this question. I've heard this question a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's Jeff's favorite. And I always thought of what's the least painful way to die? I don't want to be thrown in a fryer, and I don't want to be boiled in my rice cooker.
But that's the most mildest. You know what I
I
mean? You
think
kind of,
throw me in the compost pile and let me die a natural death.
oh yeah, put me in the ground so I
Yeah,
can grow
and
my
I'll be-
family. That's a good one.
I grow a family.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because this is a question I've asked several times over the years, and people generally answer this as the delicious factor.
Oh.
What do I like? How do I want to be prepared? Because this is what I like. Rice cooker, French fry, au gratin for me, right? You want a deliciousness.
What's for you? Gotan?
Yeah, au gratin, or
Nice.
maybe like something like that, scalloped, right, etc. Jim, and this is kind of a well-known thing at this point, tends to be more of a downer on some things. And so he took it, and I hadn't thought about this, was the pain aspect of I'm a potato, and now I'm going to die.
That's my identity.
Right.
And now you're going to put me through some torturous death, being thrown in boiling oil.
Make me a
No,
digital
thank you.
potato.
There you
Turn me
go.
into digital credential.
AI, your potato now with 100% more AI or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. And then I have heard the one about being planted to
Yeah.
become more potatoes.
Yeah.
So more of like a nurturing type of answer. So for me, it's a little bit of a psychology test. Like, all right, well, where's the headspace at?
Who
And
cares about pain?
yeah, obviously I'm not a doctor, so please don't take medical advice on, potato-ness and
It's
how that relates to your mental.
American you. Disclaimer, don't sue me.
Right, yeah, exactly. All right. So that was a great conversation. I really appreciate you guys taking time. I know it's a very busy time. You have panels, you've been on the stage. You guys have been awesome.
Yeah, you're doing great work too. So thank you for the effort.
Thank you.
Yeah, we
Thank
need
you.
pushers and IAM heroes out there to drive things forward. And a lot of organizations have IAM heroes internally, and it's sheer will that things get done.
That's true, yeah.
In spite of politics, funding,
yeah.
governments,
Yeah.
just all the things that are going to happen. So I really do appreciate you guys' efforts, and hopefully it becomes sooner rather than later, because I am all in. Like, the one thing I don't want to have happen though is like 48 different wallets.
Yeah.
And it just replaces the ID and password to some degree. Like, let's try to figure out how we can not have a wallet for every single thing. I think that would be really nice.
We're making it very, very easy for you to select one out of 48. So even if you have 48,
You can stick with the one then. Yeah.
stick with the paper.
And we are very dedicated to make it a universal thing.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here for this episode. Let's see what else. Thanks again to Governor Cole, and especially Marina and Martin for bringing us out here and helping us set
And
this
Warwick.
up. And Warwick for the shout out on the stage.
Oh,
That was awesome.
That was cool.
That was unexpected. So I didn't know that was
Unscripted.
happening. Right? I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then when he said it, I was like, oh, that's neat. And then when people started clapping, that was even neater, because that could have very quickly turned into nobody knows. No clapping, or even worse, boo. So definitely appreciate the support that we've gotten on here, and I hope we'll be able to come back again next year. So you can find us on the web, idacpodcast.com. Everywhere you get podcasts, like, share, spread the gospel of IAM and the work that these guys are doing, and let's get it done. So with that, thanks everyone for watching and or listening, and we'll talk with y'all in the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.